Okay, and now it's recording.
All right,
So
let's do it.
behave.
Okay.
One more.
I feel like make this smaller or something.
It'll just disappear by itself.
Oh well, okay, great. And I'll put this guy. This. Sure this will disappear?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Bunch of people here. Got some notes on my phone here. All right. Financial independence. That's what we're talking about. Oh yeah. Yeah, let's go. I'm going to start with a disclaimer because Richard recommended I put this in here. Nothing is endorsed by PLOS, and I'm also not responsible for anything you do. I'm just telling you this information. Treat it as like this is stuff Jono's doing. He might be smart, he might not be. Actually, I really learned about all this stuff in the last half a year. So like I'm gonna be talking about like investing money and stuff like that. So and my money's like doing okay. So I'm not like a mastermind on this stuff. So yeah, ask questions, but I have a lot of slides. I'm trying to pack in a lot of information. And if you see anything that's weird, raise your hand and let me know. You have plug in from another device. Okay, that's all right. Okay, what is FI? Financial independence. So I mentioned financial independence to a friend the other day, and I was like, I'm getting into this stuff. He's like, so what's that? Like when you like make enough money so you can move out of your parents' house? And I was like, no, it's something different. Basically, it's closely related to retiring early and doing what you want to do with your time. At its core, it's about maximizing your savings rate and like how to invest well. Retiring early doesn't necessarily mean not working. You could still work, but it's more about like doing what you love to do and like working on your own terms. If you're already doing what you love to do, that's great.
Don't mind me.
Okay.
You can keep talking.
I'm going to do the next slide.
Okay.
Maybe press the arrow. Okay.
JK.
Okay, so Mr. Money Mustache, you may have heard the name. He's kind of probably the most famous name in the financial independence community.
You really didn't just give me that?
No. Well, maybe he is. I don't know. I should ask him. But he has a good blog, and he's kind of made a name for himself, and he's got a great name. And this is something he said, works better when you don't need the money. Here's the high-level view by another famous name, J.H. Allen. Spend less money than you earn, invest the surplus, and avoid debt. Simple math behind early retirement. This is an article also written by Mr. Money Mustache. Your savings rate, the only thing that matters for retirement is your savings rate as a percentage of your take-home pay. Let's look at this chart here. So this is the percentage of your take-home pay that you put away into savings. So like right now, if you use the 401k we have at PLOS, you're probably putting away a few percent or whatever every month out of your paycheck. If you're putting away 5%, you can retire in 66 years. That's a long time. I think the majority of people at PLOS probably put in 5 to 10%. That seems like a common number at a lot of organizations. You can have retirement funds elsewhere, but if that's all you're doing just doing a contribution from your paycheck, it would take 66 years. Now, something to know about this is your income does not matter. This is strictly about the percentage of your take-home pay that you're putting away. So it's kind of about how much of your pay that you need to live on every day. So if you need 95% of your pay, of your paycheck to live on, then you're spending a lot of your paycheck. If you can somehow reduce your spending down to 50% of your paycheck, then in 17 years you can retire. Doesn't matter what your paycheck is. It could be $30,000. It could be $300,000. If you can get down your percentage, that's what gets you to this number. It also involves managing your money correctly, but that's the idea behind this. So people that are really into the financial independence, they scrimp and save and they try to retire in 10 years. That's a common thing. So they put away 60, 70%, which is crazy for us because we live in the Bay Area. And which is why I'm trying to do this myself. But what I've managed to do is I'm going from like 10 to 20%. I'm nowhere near any of this stuff. I'm just shaving off a couple of years to get to retirement a little earlier. If you somehow have very low expenses or can move back in with your parents or something like that, you can probably get this rate a little better. But yeah, the cost of living is ridiculous here. But remember that your actual pay doesn't matter. Here's another rule that you may have heard of. It's called the 4% rule. This is a way to determine when you are ready to retire. So the way you calculate this is you can retire when you are able to live on 4% of your savings per year. So that means, let's say you calculate what your average cost of living is, and you spend $40,000 a year total. That's like for rent and all that stuff. Then if you have $1 million in the bank, then you can retire, because that's 4% of $1 million. So it's based on your cost of living. So people use a 4% rule to calculate based on their savings when they can stop working. So people who have very low cost of living can retire earlier. Yeah.
Can you clarify real quick, when you say savings versus your retirement fund, are you using the terms interchangeably?
That is a good question. So I'm using them kind of interchangeably, but I'm trying to make that a little blurry so I don't have to get into all the details of the differences. But yeah, tapping into your retirement early, because you can't really get in your 401k until you're 59, is a tricky thing to do if you're actually able to retire at 45 or something. People that do that also invest in the stock market outside of their 401k, which is more of what we'll be talking about later.
Okay.
So the idea is you would have investments that get you to the point of 59 and you can start tapping into your 401k.
I have a quick 4% rule.
Yeah.
So that applies like if you're trying to really retire early, right? Because in the traditional way of retirement is maybe retire late in life, you only have a few years left, say, and then you just spend it all out and instead of going into banking. But this is like if you're trying to live sustainably on that for.
That's a good question. So this.
Can you kind of repeat that into the
yeah. So he was asking basically, typically people try to when they retire, they don't have that many years left in their life when they're retiring, so they have a kind of fixed window to spend out all their earnings. The idea with the 4% rule is this doesn't really matter for early or regular retirement, but if you do retire early and you invest your money in the correct way, basically your money will keep paying you back money. So it's not like you're going to be running your money out doing this. 4% is based on you can get a certain amount of returns back. So you're planning on it being a long time in retirement. Okay, phases of financial independence. Getting out of debt, building wealth, and preserving wealth. Getting out of debt, I'm really going to be focusing on building wealth because that's what we spend a lot of our working life doing. I'll talk more about that. Preserving wealth is when you're closer to retirement. So how does this work? So get out of debt. This is very important. Have to get out of debt before you can start building your wealth. Pay off your highest interest loans first. I'm actually not going to talk a lot about getting out of debt because it's very important, but I'm not going to get into it. I'm going to talk more about building wealth. Dave Ramsey is a famous guy who talks about this stuff. I have not read or heard any of this stuff, but he has a lot of information about it. The only thing I'll say is, like, when you're in debt, you're paying a lot of money on interest, so the longer you're in debt, the more money you're losing. We recently finished paying off our student loans, and we realized we lost over $40,000 in interest. That's a lot of money that we lost. So, and because I learned about this all recently, I didn't realize about that being a problem. So definitely, you have to get out of debt first. That's number one. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about just some being frugal and how to save. This doesn't work for everyone, but I'm going to talk about some cool frugal things that I think are interesting. Okay, reducing your phone costs. So average phone bill is $73. That seems high. I'd be surprised if people here are paying that much, but many people do. Unlimited plans are usually not worth it. You're paying for more than you should be. So use a cheap contract MVNO. I meant to look up what that stands for, but it's basically they're kind of like prepaid phone plans that basically they buy tower nets from like Sprint and all those things and resell it for cheaper. And with those, you can pay like $0 to $30 a month for your regular use. You don't have to, even though it's prepaid, you don't have to like do weird savvy stuff. It's still pretty cheap.
It's a mobile virtual network operator.
There you go. So I'm saying like $25 is about how much an average person would spend on an MVNO. I'm going to say, let's say you're spending $60 a month, so you can save $400 a year per person with the phone. Here's an example of some MVNOs. I've tried a few of them. Yeah, different ones. They all have kind of slightly different features. I've used Ting for many years. I know Matt uses Ting. He pays like $20 or something. Freedom Pop is what I use, and I'm paying like $0 a month. But
What?
I do very weird. I'm a hyper optimizer, so I do very weird things. I don't recommend. We can talk about that later. But basically, I don't call when I'm outside of a building. I do all my calls through wireless. I get that to work. MinSim, I think, is a good thing. My wife's still using it, and regularly use $25 a month. Good. You can call like nothing different. Okay, eating out less.
No.
You can do it. An average American spends thousands of dollars eating out. I'm only talking about lunch. I'm not talking about going for dinner here. You should also try to. You can also try to do that. You're not supposed to give advice. You can try to do that as well. So, yearly savings, if you bring your own lunch, $700. I just kind of made a guess there. Comparing, like, if it costs a couple of dollars a meal to bring to work or whatever. But that $700 adds up. So, if you invest those savings in an index fund instead of putting it towards lunch, I'm going to talk more about index funds later. 10 years later, with compounding interest and stuff, $11,000. That's a lot of money. You could buy a used car for that much money if you want. I'm all the way back here. Okay, speaking of cars, buy a gently used car if you need to drive. Some people need to drive. Like, I like to bike, but I can't get across a bridge on my car. I might bike. Buy a gently used one. You may have heard, when you first buy a car, they depreciate 40 to 50% during the first 3 years, so you're paying a premium for that new car. So this chart talks about selling. If you are trying to make money in your car, that's fine, but there's ownership costs, maintenance costs, but the sweet spot is in the first few years. You get the most out of your car, basically, and the most value out of it. Yearly savings of buying a 3-year-old car is about $1,000 versus buying like a new car. Okay, riding a bike. I know a lot of people here ride bikes, but talk a little bit about it. Bikes are inexpensive. They require no insurance, no registration, no licensing, no parking spaces. Very easy to own, saves money and time. You don't have to go to the gym because you're already biking. Also reduces medical spending because you're healthier. Bonus, biking is statistically safer than driving. People often think they're less safe.
In San Francisco.
Yeah, and yes, in urban areas, definitely, yeah. Statistically, you are more likely to be in an accident in a car. I think the statistics are often because cars drive very fast and there's a lot of fatalities, but yeah, you are more likely to be in an accident in a car. And they increase your lifespan. There's an interesting article, there's a link in here that basically says when you're riding a bike, you're actually becoming healthier, so you're increasing your lifespan instead of reducing it. Yearly savings by biking, $8,000. That's a lot of money. I basically calculated just cost of car ownership is pretty high, like buying a car, paying for insurance, parking, whatever else. Okay, budgeting. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but there's software for doing budgets if you want to keep an eye on what your spending is, and you might see, oh, I spend a lot of money on one thing, and I spend less on it. These are like, there's a couple. This is just a spreadsheet if you want to do it kind of old school style and just keep a list of stuff. And then the menu part of manage. Line app is you need a budget. That's an app where you can enter stuff. Personal capital is another one. Some people are really into budgeting. I have not really done it myself. Couponing. This is where you have coupons. Yeah, you find coupons and cut them out and go shopping with them. This is interesting.
It was so great to win.
Okay. I'm going to show you a little video here. This is kind of tangential, but I thought it was funny. Trevor showed me this show called Extreme Couponing. Let me go back here. Where people actually compete for saving the most money with coupons. This is the whole show. This is a reality show.
Worth of products. But with just 8 coupons to go, Chris is on the verge of reaching his own zero balance.
8 to go. 7. 6. I don't mean to rush you, but I'm like freaking out here.
If Chris is able to match Joni's 100% savings, his higher retail total will break the tie and give him the title of Ultimate Extreme Couponer.
All right, last one. Done.
How much do I owe you for that $6,000 haul?
0. Nothing.
Like this kind of 0? Oh my goodness, we did it!
Chris, you are this season's ultimate extreme couponer.
Oh man, I watched some clips. People have some storage space. It is funny. I don't recommend doing this. I think it's funny.
So how many times do they buy something that they actually need rather than just like?
Well, when you look at the storage things in their garage, it looks like a mini grocery store where they have like 1,000 paper towels and all this stuff. So, I don't know what they need this stuff for. So side note, when I was a kid, my dad would get me to go shopping with him by letting me save money on the coupons. I cut out the coupons and then he'd give me the savings as a way for me to go shopping with him. Okay, so investing. This is where the actual bulk of the talk is. So let's take a look at some ways you would invest your money. Okay, so this is a chart I made that shows investment risk versus reward. Down here you have low risk and low reward. Up there you have high risk, high reward. Low risk, low reward is your checking and savings account, where a lot of us probably have our money. I'm not talking about a retirement plan. I'm talking about you have savings like you get from your paycheck. You just put it in your bank or something. So you can, let's say it's starting here, but the rate of return on this is very low. Like your bank interest is 0.1% or something. Interest rates are low. If you want a little more, you could put them in CDs or money markets. Some people do that. You get, I don't know, maybe 1% back on that. Then if you want a little more, you could put money in bonds. I'm going to talk a little bit about these because I don't know how much everyone knows, but bonds are basically you're investing in money that the government spent already. So if they took out money to buy some roads, they need someone to pay that money back. So we buy those shares of their debt, and then we get money back from them. Those are very stable, but they're pretty low returns. And those junk bonds, those are like corporate bonds, which are, instead of having a government invest money, you have like a corporation that's a little less trustworthy or has not as good of a credit history, but better returns because they're higher risk. And note that this arrow says below interest rates. So the idea is if your money is in savings and checking, your money is losing value in the bank because if you just leave that money in there year to year, the value of the money is going down because of these interest rates. So you want to get above the interest rate. Right now, it's like, I don't know what it is, maybe 1% or something less than that. So we have really low interest rates. you definitely want to get above it. So, but checking and savings will not get you there. The government bonds, junk bonds, that's the area where you start at least keeping your money above the value of keeping it from devaluing itself. Okay. So it's junk bonds, target date funds, and robo-advisors. Target date funds are what probably a lot of us use in our 401k here. It might be like the default. I'm not sure what the default is, but it's like when you have a mutual fund that says, I'm going to retire in 2030 or something. And then it kind of gets managed by the brokerage, and they change how conservative it is over time, and they choose different stocks and stuff. The idea is later in your lifetime, you want more bonds because it's more stable if you have more money in bonds and stocks. Those are really good for really hands-off investing and keeping your money above the interest rate. Robo-advisors are like Betterment, you've probably heard of. It's like an app on your phone where you can put money in, fill out a risk profile, and it says like, how much risk am I willing to take? If you're very high risk, they'll put more into stocks, less into bonds. Those are good to get you in the stock market. Well, yeah. Then there's managed mutual funds. Those are like target date funds, but it's mostly, usually that's just stocks, like a collection of stocks, and some company's managing it for you, and you pay a management fee for it. So those fees could be like, up 1% of what's in there, which sounds like it's little, but it can add up to a lot of return. Broad market index funds are when you invest in like a whole, you're kind of investing in the whole stock market. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. Property ownership, you're getting into a little surprising. Well, the jury is out on if that's more or less risky. I'm putting it on the more risky because that stuff varies with the economy. Sometimes, if you own your house, the neighborhood could be good or it could be bad, or that stuff can all change. It's actually more variable than the broad market stuff, index funds. You could make more money on it though. And another thing with property ownership is you have to go into debt to get it typically. Like you have to take loans out for it, so it doesn't scale very well. There's different ways to do real estate. You can buy shares, but I'm talking about like just owning a house. Individual stocks, like if I was to just buy a stock, like I heard today that Apple stock is really good. I could just go invest in it. You can make a lot of money on that potentially if you know what you're doing. Then there's like collectibles and cryptocurrencies. So if you want to, that's speculation. So speculation, which is kind of like gambling, is just I think this will work. Maybe it won't, but I could get a lot back from it, or I could lose it all. If you have a very high risk tolerance, you can go that route. I don't recommend it because you could lose a lot. Collectibles, you could think Beanie Babies are all the rage and put all your money in Beanie Babies. That worked out. The one thing I'll say with individual stocks, the reason why I write speculation here is you can do it either way with individual stocks. Some people are good with the market, like they really understand about stocks and how the market moves and trends and that sort of stuff, and they learn about an industry and they learn about technology and they can really know that Apple's going to do well. Those people probably aren't speculating. I mean, they're making very educated, knowledgeable choices, and they spend time researching, and it's a lot of effort. Or there could be someone that just hears newspaper, Apple's good, so I'm just going to throw some money at Apple. That's what I would call speculation. So you can kind of go either route. I've tried doing individual stocks. I didn't have a great success, but it was an interesting thing. Any questions about this chart so far? Okay. Okay, risk tolerance I mentioned before. You have to know how much risk you're willing to take. So the stock market can be volatile, so it goes up and down constantly. It doesn't always go in one direction. So if you want to watch the market every day and you see your money, you have your money in the stock market, and you see it drops 20%, and you will sleep over it and that stuff, that means you shouldn't be in the stock market. If you have confidence in it, then you should, or you could be in it. That's kind of what risk tolerance is.
Yeah, that's what this chart is kind of cool. I found in New York Times. This is like people who have low risk tolerance with a lot of bonds in their portfolio. People with high risk tolerance usually do stocks. Usually they're talking about stocks versus bonds with that. Emergency fund is another concept you may have heard of. That's how much money to keep in your bank that's not invested in case an emergency happens. Like you need your car breaks down, you need a car or medical emergency or something like that. There's different schools of thought on that. A lot of people think you should keep around 6 months of your living expenses. That's a lot of money to keep around if you manage to have that much in there. Some people say keep a lot around. There are people that believe keep nothing around, put it all in the stock market. You can take it out as needed. Different schools of thought. Okay, low-fee total stock market index funds. This is the goal here. Okay, an index mutual fund, which was that middle tier of the graph, which I think is kind of the sweet spot, said to provide a broad market exposure and low portfolio turnover. So an index fund, they track an index. So there's different indexes on the market, like you've heard of S&P 500, Dow Jones, and those things. Those are different indexes that are kind of supposed to be indicators of things that are happening in the market. So they're supposed to have a good exposure to different things. Total stock market means it tracks all U.S. companies. So in one fund, you'll have every single U.S. company in it. And they're weighted by the market. So that means there's over 3,000 U.S. publicly traded companies. So if you buy one of these funds, you have 3,000. You have a piece of every company in the U.S. market, which is kind of neat. But they're weighted by how big the companies are. So I mentioned Apple before. Apple's has the biggest size. It's worth the most money, so it's most highly weighted in there. If you're a small company, you will be a very small percentage, but you still own a percentage of them. And index funds usually have only 10% the management fee of a managed mutual fund. I said before, like the mutual funds, usually you're paying like 1% or something for it to be managed. These can be like 10% of what it's worth or less. Some of them are really cheap. Because the idea is there's no one in there picking and choosing what should be right, like in a managed mutual fund, where you have stock experts saying this is good and that's good. You have just the whole market moving and deciding what's in. Here's a quote. This is something Warren Buffett said to his shareholders. I'm going to read it and I'll explain what it means. My advice to the trustee couldn't be more simple. Put 10% of cash in short-term government bonds, 90% in low-cost S&P index fund. I believe the trust's long-term results from this policy will be superior to those obtained by most investors. He's talking about like managed mutual funds, whether pension funds, institutions, or individuals who employ active managers. So this is Warren Buffett. I think everyone here has probably heard of him. He is like literally the best stock picker in the world, probably. And he is suggesting put your money in these unmanaged index funds. I mean, if you're an expert at doing the self-management, you can make a lot of money. This is like his general advice to people. He's saying put 90% of it into an index fund. Okay, here's some example funds. Vanguard, the most famous one is VTSAX. That's like the first index fund you may have heard of, and that's what started this whole craze. They have variation. The Vanguard Schwab has their own thing. Fidelity has their things. There's different ones. Those are total stock market index funds, so they have all 3,000 companies. If you don't, now let's say you're using a different company to invest your money. If you don't have access to the total stock market, you get a broad market index fund, which is, like Warren Buffett was saying, S&P 500, which just tracks the top 500 companies. They track very similar to each other, or something else, S&P 500 or Dow Jones. So here's an actual chart of what VTSAX looks like since 2008, when the last kind of crash happened. It's hard to see, but this purple is VTSAX, and this green, which is right below it, is S&P 500. So you can see they're pretty much the same. As long as you get some kind of index that's related to the whole market, you're pretty good. Oh yeah, and this shows the top holdings. So Apple has like 3%, Microsoft is 2.5%, Facebook, JP Morgan. Like when Facebook's stock tanked the other week, You could have had money in Facebook and thought it was really good, but it took a hit, but it's not that significant. It's only 1.5% of the portfolio. So those of us who have money in there, it's okay. Where is that much? Okay, so let's talk about some example returns. Let's say you have $10,000 in a savings account, and it's just sitting in the bank. Right now, you're getting probably less than 5.5% returns on that. Federal interest rate over 40-year average is 5%. Like right now, it's like 1%, but I looked at the average, and it's actually much higher. If you put it in an index fund, it averages about 8%. Well, no, it's actually, when you look at the last 40 years, it averaged 12% actually, but I'm saying a very conservative estimate, an average of 8% over the long term. The point here is, if you're in the bank savings rate, your money losing value, as we talked about before, because you want to get it above this interest rate. Stock market gets you above that, and the index fund is the most stable rate. If you put your money in this 8% growth in 30 years and do nothing, you just put in $10,000, don't add anything to it. 30 years is worth 10 times as much, $100,000. Now, if you add to it every month, like take a piece out of your paycheck and add to it, like in this example, I have $500 a month, it's worth $850,000, which is pretty good.
You have to have a pretty strong stomach for risk, though.
If you do the index fund?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, yes, but I'm trying to say that I don't think it's that risky. I mean, it's a long-term bet that you're making.
How often do you look at it?
I look at it a lot, but you shouldn't look at it a lot. Yeah. But good point.
When you say long-term, what is long-term?
That's also a good question. Like, I think the jury's kind of out on that, but I would say above 10 years is long term. Yeah. I mean, there are people that do all sorts of optimizing here. They like put money into the stock market because they're going to buy a car in a year and they think it's going to they have really good confidence. It's going to double its size and they're going to be able to buy a car. That I think is risky. But the stock market goes up and down year to year. I'll actually talk about that a little bit. Here's some principles on index fund investing. There's a major crash coming. So crashes always happen. Absolutely assume they always happen. You can tell I'm very confident that the market will be good, but I know they're going to happen. In fact, a crash might be happening now. We might be in the beginning of one. We are definitely due for one because our market is overinflated. Yeah, always expect a crash, so don't be surprised when it happens. And during the downturn, stocks are on sale. So the idea is sometimes when people see a downturn coming and they have money in the market, they run and pull their money out, which we know is a problem because that causes more crashing. But some people are opportunists and they actually keep cash aside and they say, oh, the stock market is really low. That means these stocks are really cheap. It's time for me to buy in. So the people that are really into the index funds, they keep putting money in when it's going down. Yep, but like I said, a crash is coming, for sure, if we're not in one right now. And there's no way to time the market. So even though we know a crash is going to come, we have no idea when. That's the important thing is if we know a crash is coming, it could be started now, it could start next week, it could start next year. But the fact that we don't know exactly when or how low it's going to go makes it so that we pretty much treat it as being no knowledge at all. Like if you don't know when it goes down and how much, there's no point in trying to time it. No one can tell you the future, and people on television who say they can, I mean, you can believe those people if you want, but why are they on television telling us that they could just be making that money in the market themselves? They're there for the ratings. Okay, and the market always goes up. So, like we're talking about investing for the long term, you want to look at the big picture with index funds, not year to year. If you're trying to put money in now and come out next week, that's not a fair bet. So over the last 40 years, the average yearly market increase is 12.6%. That's pretty amazing compared to that 0.1% you're getting in the bank. Over the last 100 100 years, the average is 12%. Hard to believe, right? That includes a lot of things that happened in the last 100 years. I wrote some down here. Great Depression, the most important one. World War II, lots of mediocre presidents, Vietnam War, JFK was assassinated, meltdowns, natural disasters, Justin Bieber, Cold War, 9/11.
He doesn't fall into that
He was
natural
Canadian.
disaster category.
He lives
he had
in
his own.
America, though.
A war on terror, war on drugs, war on Christmas, the Great Recession. Okay, lots of things happen.
Can I ask a question about it?
Yeah.
Do you happen to know what, that's the average over the last 40 years, and the last 100 years. But do you know, like, over the last 100 years, what the worst 40 years returns were? So, that's timing is really important. Do you have, like, the low?
I don't have the lows, but this average yearly market, this link here actually has every year's information, so you can do different averages, and it shows lows and shows lots of stuff, like stretches of lows and stretches of highs. Like right now we're in the third longest stretch of bull market, but there's a lot of good information there. Yeah, there have been some lows, but you can even look at this next chart, and I'd show you some. So this is the history of the Dow Jones. This is 1900, and this is 2016. You can see the market has gone up. Here is the Great Depression. So that's a pretty big dip, right? That's just going down for years. This is like 2 years of drop, and it's a significant drop. We have like 2008 over here. That was the last one we all saw. So yeah, you can see investing in the short term is not a great bet, but investing in the long term is pretty good. Like clearly this trend is going up. That's the point of what I'm talking about.
What is the bottom right?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Volume?
Because that starts with the 2008 thing, so it could be the bubble, a picture of the bubble, some kind of volatility. Oh, but the cool thing about this, I found this on the internet, is this is, the comment's predicting this is the top. Saying, oh, this is the top, stop putting your money in. Or we hit the top when it starts going down, but yet we still go up. This is the top, this is the top, no, this is the top. The computers have won, all this stuff. Kind of funny, sure. Yeah. Okay, another principle, don't get cold feet. Those who leave money in the market longer tend to have better returns. That's kind of about, like I was saying, when you see a crash coming, you pull your money out real quick. People that kind of do that with index funds tend to underperform. So if you leave your money in longer, the better it does. I get if you have a crystal ball, it's different, but our experience shows that is not the case. People who perform the best with index funds are people who forgot they had investments, which is what I recommend that we all do. And even more so, people who are dead. Like there was some analysis done on funds that were left in for long periods of time, and those are people who really forgot that they had lots of money in there. So that's all. That's kind of to illustrate that long term is on your side, and this is particularly good for like the younger people in the room, because the younger you are, the more time is on your side, right? If you do it later when you're closer to retirement, you don't have much time for it to grow, and the concept of long term is different when you're retiring. You're more sensitive about a swing in the market. Okay, keeping disciplined. Don't wait to invest. Put money in regularly. Like waiting to invest is like trying to time the market. The longer you're waiting, kind of the more your potential losses are. The idea with that is, even if you, let's say a crash is coming, and it happens in 6 months, you could wait till you think that crash is done in a year and put it in. Or if you put it in now, you can get growth until 6 months. And then a crash can happen. That growth could counteract the crash that happened. So trying to time that is not worth it. It's kind of my assessment of it. You can take that what you want. Put money in regularly, like I said. I try to put in money from every paycheck, even if it's a small amount. And it's low effort to manage because you are not pulling stuff in and out. You're just kind of regularly putting money in. It takes a couple of hours a year to check up. So the idea is like at the end of the year or whatever, you might look at it when you're doing taxes if you need to, but you don't really have to. Or if you're getting close to retirement, you want to think about rebalancing. Rebalancing is that concept of, when you get older, you might want to put more money into bonds instead of stocks because you're more concerned about losing your money. You want to preserve the money. That's the wealth preservation stage. Okay, diversification. You probably heard of that. Total stock market index has all of the U.S. companies, so that's very diverse. But if you don't think that's diverse enough, like you think for some reason our president might do some weird stuff, you might want to be invested in other things. So you can invest in other countries. There's indexes for developed countries, developing countries, specific sectors if you want to be like in the commodities or things like that, or you think gold is really important, you can invest in all those things too. But there's risks and rewards for all those. I kind of thought in on the total stock market index, so that's good for me. Okay, here's my plan for me. Treat the index like my 401k and put a fixed amount in every month. So I like my 401k, the money gets taken out pre-tax and shipped in my paycheck, and then put in the 401k. I also take out an additional amount from my paycheck every month and automatically deposit it into my Schwab account. I keep 90% in total stock market index and 10% in cash, so I can use it. And when I turn 50, I'll start to rebalance into more bonds, so I can preserve that money. Okay, a little bit about tax optimization. People get really into this stuff. I'm just talking really briefly. 401k, retirement plan, you may have heard. It's good to max that out every year because you save a lot of money in the long run. The more money you put into that, the less money you have to pay for taxes. So, yeah, I definitely think that's a good thing to do. Put in as much as you possibly can because you're saving money by doing that. In the long run, like that money is going to be valuable to you later on, and it grows in the stock market. So, or it grows while you're not touching it. Then there's IRAs if you're not working. That has a lower limit. HSA. It's a little more complicated, but it's kind of like an FSA, but you can also invest in the stock market and it lasts forever, not like an FSA. I think we might have access to those here, but you have to do some wheeling and dealing with your health insurance. I've never used it. 529 is like college savings fund if you want to put money away for your kids. If you think they're going to college, you can put in a lot of money into there to reduce your taxes and pay less money on tax. 457 is a teacher savings account. If you're a teacher, I think some government jobs have this. It's basically like a 401k, but you can put away twice as much. People put away a lot of money in there. Deductions, stock donations, you can actually donate if you have stocks. You can actually donate it, and it can be very beneficial to you for taxes because you don't have to pay on capital gains. I'm not going to get too much into that stuff. Okay. Total change of subject, credit card rewards. I'm trying to fit a lot into this. Okay, this is kind of a fun-ish thing that people do in the financial independence community. Churning is the term for it. It's the practice of signing up for credit cards that give you a bonus early on and getting that bonus and then no longer using the card. So usually they're like points, travel points. Sometimes it's cash back, other things. But the point with this is you want to get the sign-up bonus, not the retained usage of it. You want to keep using it every day to just get that dollar or get the 1% back. You only want the sign-up bonus because that's where the money is. Will this affect my credit score? Depends how you use your card. If you don't have credit card debt and you regularly pay them off, and you are kind of organized, this won't. My understanding is it will not. In fact, some people have reported that it improves their credit score. I don't know a lot about credit. I've read a little, but credit scoring is kind of complicated. It's based on a lot of things. If you do this in a kind of disciplined way, the people that are into this really track their score and make sure that it's good. Here's an example. You get a Chase credit card, spend $2,000 in the first 3 months because that's what you need to get that bonus. And you receive the bonus of $5,000 50,000 travel points. That's like a kind of standard type of bonus you see on these cards. And every 3 months, since that happens in the first 3 months, you get the bonus, you don't need to use it anymore. Every 3 months, open a different card and repeat. So you keep opening cards, and they're different cards. They're not the same card. You can't get the same one because there are limits on different banks that have different cards. And there's some complexity here, but there's a lot of information that'll kind of guide you through it. Like this. No, okay. This is an example plan. Okay, here's like an opening thing. Every 3 months, you're going to do one of these. Open this card, you get a bunch of points. This guy gets a bunch of points. Okay, 2 years later, you have $4,000 worth of flights, hotels, and car rentals. So that's a lot of money. You didn't actually. That money didn't cost you anything. It cost you a little bit of organization, basically. And I think once you start doing it, it becomes easier to do. I'm like at my second card here because I'm new to this. But oh yeah, one thing I want to mention, actually back on this slide, is spending $2,000 in the first 3 months. If that's hard for you to do, like you don't spend that much, I also don't recommend this. But like if you can, there are ways to do that. I don't think it's worth the effort, but if that's something that's regular for you, like you have family, you have a lot of food bills, or you can pay with your credit card for lots of things. Some people pay their rent with their credit card or whatever. Then you can easily do this, right? You just do it all at once. Yeah.
So you have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay, a lot to cover. Okay, here's a crazy ass chart I found online that explains to you if you want it, you're going to get. Here's like different schedules for different cards you can get. You kind of follow these things. There are forums for this stuff where people have done all the work. It is meticulously, every piece has been done for you. Yeah. Okay, that's enough about sharing. The FI community, there's a lot of people involved, different schools of thoughts, lots of books, blogs. So here's a couple different sides of the community. Quality of life, early retirement. This is about what people do if they do retire early. They can homeschool their kids, they can continue to work if they want. Hobby development, general happiness, that's like, there are parts of this community that are just talking about how to meditate and be happy people and stuff. Life hacking, this stuff's kind of fun. DIY home repairs to save money. You can figure out how to fix your stuff instead of having someone do it for you, because YouTube can tell you a lot of these things now. Side hustles, if you make jewelry on the side and sell that or something. Being healthy, there's people that are like kind of hacking their diet. Grocery budgeting, geographic arbitrage, that's kind of like moving to a place with low taxes, so your cost of living is very low, or like moving to another country where rent is very low or something like that. Tax hacking, HSA investing, I mentioned HSA earlier. Asset location is like, this stuff's pretty nerdy. It's kind of like being very specific about stocks and bonds and all that sort of stuff. Aga backdoor, Roth conversion limit. These are kind of like high levels, or level 10 kind of hacks of how to manage your retirement account. Occupational arbitrage is like going into a job that, like being a teacher, like I mentioned before, that teachers can put away like $35,000 a year. I've read a story about this guy who moved to Georgia, really low cost of living. He pays like $10,000 a month for all his, or a year for all his expenses. He puts all of his money, 75% of it into his 401k. So he reduces taxable income and he's able to retire very quickly. So people who are super into this stuff will do everything to make it happen. All right, cool. We made it kind of to the end. Here's some resources if you want to read more. Simple Path to Wealth is a great book that kind of breaks down index funds and explains how the market works. If there's any one resource, I recommend that. It's one book. You finish it, be done with it. Mr. Mustache is a blog. He's more into the lifestyle, having a good time stuff. Choose Five is a podcast that actually got me into all this stuff. They're weekly talks about kind of financial hacking and how to do cool stuff. Reddit has a financial independence forum. This is great. If you want to ask, you can go on and say, my 401k does this. Like, what should I move this, and that? Or they'll help you out. Churning is the Reddit forum for the credit card stuff. That is super useful because they have every answer for all your weird questions about when do I open this card and who do I call? And like, they have it all worked out. It is, every piece of it is worked out for you. Like, the internet is awesome. Okay. And here's the link to this talk if you want it.
Awesome.
And if you didn't read, if there's too much information, all I'm saying is long-term savings and a total stock market index fund. I said a lot of reasons why, but that's the idea.
Thanks, man. And thank you.
Do we get these slides?
Yeah, if you go to this, or
So there'll be a recording of this, and when I send the recording out, I'll also like explicitly. Thanks, John.
Thank you, internet people.
Like,
Like, do
I